much for coming to our show, for our exhibit opening. We are super excited to have both Reagan and Mary's art here and on display. Unfortunately, Mary could not be here tonight. We are still honored to have Reagan here with us. And he is going to tell us all about this very unique, very fantastic display. Without further ado, we will give a warm welcome to Reagan and let him tell us about his art.
My name is Reagan D. Pufall, and I'm the artist here for Archives 2. The concept for this show is to have made something similar to like what we would find as like ancient ruins. Like we've all seen like scenes of like Greco-Roman stuff being discovered, or ancient Egyptian or Mesoamerican. And like I really find that kind of thing interesting and fascinating. And I'm also kind of interested in what that would look like in the future. So like if we start exploring other worlds or other planets, or we start rehabitating the Earth, like what would it look like when we find ruins of other places, either on other planets or stuff from here now. So the idea would be to create work that uses hyper-contemporary materials and techniques. So 3D printing, 3D scanning, laser engraving, acrylics, polymer plastics. All of those materials were chosen for basically, so they're made now. Like plastic is now literally part of our geologic record. So a little bit like the first atomic bomb being set off, you can use that as a marker in history now, based on radioactive decay to know when something was made. In many years from now, millions of years from now, they can look at our geologic layer and find plastic. So this is kind of like the defining material of this time period. So to kind of create that idea of that ancient kind of work, I went with the kind of classic face scan and then 3D print of actual people. And I find it very satisfying and interesting that it's actual people rather than just kind of made up or generated faces, because that is a lot like what we would see of those ancient cultures. With those Greco-Roman busts, for the Roman ones, those were living busts for them. They would pull off, they'd actually have interchangeable heads on a lot of the bodies. But those heads would be people of their ancestors that they want to be able to talk about and converse with. And for the Romans, really to show off, it's like, hey, check it out, this guy's my ancestor, let me tell you about him. So these being real people was important for the show. In an ideal situation, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, when I'm retired, I would actually bury all of this in kind of a setting under the ground somewhere in a desert, maybe like New Mexico. And so the light source is supposed to replicate the kind of light that I'd actually want to put in that installation. So rather than being stand up like this, it would be instead flipped upside down and then come down to the ceiling. This light right here would not be powered by a powerful LED cob, but would instead be powered by a series of mirrors the sun passes over each time. So I'm sure some of you notice that the light dips in intensity, and that's supposed to represent clouds passing over that light source. Similarly, this light is also programmed to dip down and then rise back up at sunrise and sunset, being turned off entirely at night. So it replicates that kind of solar event that would be in the actual installation. Then no set of ruins are kind of without their own set of kind of decipherable but still alien text. So we have these large panels over on the opposing wall that form this kind of black mirror that you can see people moving in throughout the room, and then as you approach it, your form becomes distinct against it, and then as you get close to it, you start being able to read this text. In the bottom right of that corner, that idea of this being something that could be found much later, is the pulsar map that is Earth's address from the Voyager spacecraft. So like if you're good at math and have a large understanding of the heavens, you could look at that map and pinpoint the Earth's location in our galaxy. In terms of longevity, the stuff similar to like those older materials is designed to last. So the acrylic panels would last probably around 300–400 years. The faces in decent conditions, 450 years, longer under ideal conditions, assuming the new plastic-eating bacteria we're developing doesn't get to it. While this one would actually be the one that would struggle the most. This would not last hundreds of years. It should last at least 100 years, but not hundreds of years before degrading in time. So like longevity of the material is also important for what we're looking at. Thematically, I also kind of excluded children out of it because it kind of muddies up the vision. It's like we don't see a lot of depictions of children and those kind of things, especially with the death mask-like appearance of some of these faces. So we've kept it to adults only. Does anyone have any kind of conceptual or technical questions about some
So these are like a little less than life size?
A little bit less than life size. So to kind of help dodge that death mask feel, I've shrunk them down slightly so they don't feel like a direct lift off of somebody's face. There's a long history of making plaster casts of people's faces, whether just for art projects back in high school. Like we all did our plaster cut thing, and there's always the one person that forgets the straws in the nose, and it turns into a crisis. And then like in World War II, for my grandmother's or great grandmother's generation, there was like if you were a pilot, you would make these death masks, and I wanted to avoid that connotation, so I did shrink them down just slightly to make it also a little bit less like you're looking at somebody that's existing. So it's helped to kind of alienate that direct relation a little bit further. So yes, they're slightly small and for good reason. Any other questions? Oh, there goes a cloud. All right, well, I'll be around if you want to talk one-on-one. And again, thank you very much for coming.
You are going to actually put this out in the desert?
If I get the funding, yeah.
Okay.
Why wouldn't I? It would be really cool.
True.
I might be slightly egregious and go bury it near Road and Craters, so it can turn part of the big Southwest art tour. There's an artist, James Turrell, who's built this kind of unbelievably cool light installation that's open-ish in a volcanic crater over in the American Southwest. But same idea, it's a large, dry, stable land mass, so I put it somewhere large and dry. Land is also surprisingly cheap out there. Like I could get the amount of land I needed like in a for a pretty reasonable cost. Getting equipment out there is another story.
Will you bury them all in one place or a different place? And will the place have to do with the faces that you scan?
I envision burying them in one place. So like there'd be a ramp down into kind of a large X-shaped area. The center would be a cylinder. In that cylinder would be the text, and then the light would come down. So the light would then be cast down these long, dark hallways. Or at least that's how I've envisioned it right now. Like that would be, again, probably like 50 years into the future, and stuff can change by then.
So would they be underground but not actually buried? You could actually walk through and still see them?
Yes, they would not be. The room would not be filled with sand or dirt or whatever. In part to try to keep them dry and safe. But yes, the room would be. You'd be able to enter